Years ago, I was driving down the street one night. I was on my way home after working pretty late. By this time, most of the roads were quiet. I had left the highway and was on more local roads. However, I still had about 15 minutes of driving left before I would get back to my apartment. As I was driving down the road, there was mostly woods on both sides at this point. I remember that I was approaching a stop sign and saw somebody standing on the side of the road nearby. It was a man, and he had a small backpack with him. It appeared as though he was hitchhiking. This was really strange to see. I had never seen anybody hitchhiking in this area before. Plus, hitchhiking in general has not been very popular in a long time. It can be obviously pretty dangerous for everybody involved. When I came to a stop at the stop sign, the man looked right at me and waved as if to ask me to let him in. After briefly stopping, I accelerated through the quiet intersection and kept going. The man remained standing by the stop sign. I continued with my drive down the road. However, I got about a minute down the road, and after a gradual turn in the road, it became very straight. That's when I saw a bunch of brake lights up ahead. There appeared to be a traffic jam. Cars were stopped on the road for almost as far as I could see. I had no idea why. I thought maybe there was a crash or something. For this many cars to be backed up, people must have been waiting for a while though, because it was late at night. So I slowed down, and eventually I came to a complete stop behind the car in front of me. I really didn't know what exactly was going on. After stopping, I waited, and the traffic did not move at all. I remember that after a few minutes, I actually put my car into park. I rolled down both my windows to get a breeze of fresh air, because it was a nice cool night. I then went on my phone to look up what was going on, and maybe find an alternate route. This had been the only way that I had gone home from work, and I didn't know anything else. There weren't a ton of roads out in this area. I couldn't really find anything about it online at the moment though, and looking ahead, all that I could really see was just brake lights of other cars. So I continued to sit there, stopped, and I started looking for an alternate route. But suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard this noise to my right. As soon as I looked up, I saw somebody at my passenger side window. It was a man. He instantly climbed inside the window, and the next thing I knew, he was in my passenger seat. It happened so fast that I never had a chance to put the window up, and the guy was not that large, so he was able to make it in easily. After getting inside, I realized that it was the same man that I had seen hitchhiking just minutes earlier. After he got in my car, I asked him what he was doing. The guy said that he really needed a ride. I told him to get out of my car, and he said no. The guy claimed that he just wanted to go a couple of towns over. I told him again to leave my car. The man did not answer me. I didn't know what to do. To be honest, I wanted to get out of my car and run away, but I did not do that. I told the man that I was going to call the police, and the guy instantly snapped back, saying that he wouldn't let me do that. What exactly that meant, I did not know. The guy moved a little closer to me. I just pushed the horn at that point and did not take my hand off it. The man told me to stop, but I didn't. After a few seconds, some other people nearby started honking as well, probably because they were annoyed at me. The man reached over and tried grabbing my arm. I screamed for help, and my windows were open, so people had to have heard me. At that point, I could not believe it, but the man finally left. He opened up the passenger's door and leaped out. Then he ran off, disappearing into the woods that was next to the road. After that, someone actually got out of their car and were approaching me. I told them what happened and let them know that I was not honking just to be annoying. Eventually, traffic started moving. It probably took about 15 minutes. I did not see the guy at all. It turned out that the traffic jam was caused by a traffic light which had fallen over. I'm not sure if somebody crashed into it or what, but I'm glad that we got moving again. I still can't believe that the guy just jumped in my car like that. He must have seen the open window. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. This happened many years ago, in the late 1980s. I was much younger, and during a short period of time, I used to hitchhike. For months, I did it without any problems. I didn't have a whole lot of money during this time, and obviously I had no car. I moved around a lot and would take buses quite often, but hitchhiking could be done where there were no buses. So I remember that one night I was trying to go to a city about 20 minutes away. I knew pretty much where it was, and I was going to hitchhike to get there. So I stood on the side of a pretty busy road. It was nighttime, and I had finished working a temporary job just before. After standing on the side of the road for about 10 minutes with most cars passing by, one finally stopped. After the car pulled over, I saw that a man was behind the wheel. He rolled down the passenger side window and asked me where I was going. I told him, and then he told me to hop into the car. So I got inside what was a pretty standard sedan for that time period. Then we left. Things started out normal. We made some brief chit-chat as we started driving. I don't remember what we talked about, but it was probably just basic stuff. Then things got quiet for a while. But I remember that after probably 10 to 15 minutes of driving, the man turned off the road that we were on. I was pretty sure that it was a straight shot to get to where I was going, so I didn't know why he would turn. After we drove on this random road for a while, I asked the guy where he was going. He turned at seemingly another back road and then said that he had to stop somewhere first. When I asked him where, he did not answer me. Things were starting to seem kind of strange at that point. The guy kept driving through back roads and soon went onto a dirt road. This one was even more quiet and seemingly in the middle of nowhere. I remember at that point, I asked again where we were going. The man just said, "You'll see." When he said that, I got a terrible feeling. I desperately wanted to get out of the car. So after going down this road for a while, he then started to turn. There was this really long and narrow driveway, it appeared. I could not even see a house or anything because of how narrow and long it was. When the man slowed down to make the turn into the driveway, he was starting to go down it, and I just opened the door. Luckily, I was able to, and after doing so, I just jumped out. I rolled into the grass next to the trees on the side of the drive, and I was fortunately not hurt. I heard and saw the car braking on the gravel driveway in front of me. I got onto my feet as quickly as possible and then took off running in the other direction. I went to the end of the driveway and back onto the road. Then I crossed the dirt road and went into the woods. It was dark over there with no streetlights, and the woods were pretty dense. I walked deep into them, and for a while I heard the car in the distance on the road, which was likely trying to look for me. I kept going through the woods for a long time. Eventually, I saw another road, or possibly it was the same one, I don't even know. But I went back onto a road and walked alongside of it for a long time. I was ready to dart back into the woods if the same car approached, but luckily I never saw it. After walking that road for a really long time, and eventually making it to another one, I noticed a gas station. It was thankfully open, and I went inside and asked where the nearest town was. I was told it was just about a mile up the road, and there was a motel. I ended up walking there and staying there for the night. I've never forgot that story, and I still remember it very well. I'm not sure what that man had planned, but I'm glad that I got away. One time, I was driving down a road late at night. It was a quiet road with no other cars in sight, and I was on my way home. I remembered that I randomly saw this woman standing on the side of the road up ahead. It wasn't like in front of a driveway or anything, and she seemed very much out of place. As I approached, I slowed down because she was standing within just a few feet of the lane that I was driving in. When I got closer though, she actually started to walk out into the street and waved at me. It was not a frantic wave, but she clearly wanted me to stop. So I slowed down and then came to a stop just in front of her. She walked around to my driver's window and I rolled it down. I asked the woman if she was okay, and she said that she really needed a ride. I then asked her what she was doing out here at this hour, but she kind of blew off my question. Instead, she just said that she only needed a ride a few miles up and asked if I could take her. I said yes because I didn't really have a problem with it. That was the direction that I was headed, so I told her to get into my passenger side. After she did, I asked her where exactly she was going. The woman said just a few miles up the road again, but didn't give an exact destination. I just thought whatever and started driving. We mostly drove in silence for the next few miles. Then the woman told me to turn right at an upcoming road, so I did. I figured that she lived over there. It was an even quieter road than the previous one that we had been on. After driving that way, I was told to take a left at the next road. I did, and this road was now surrounded by woods on both sides. I was driving slowly down this very quiet road, and then randomly the woman told me to stop right there. I was very confused. There were no houses or buildings, it was just woods. She said that she would get out there and thanked me for the ride, but I asked her why she wanted me to stop there. She just said that's where she wanted to get out. I asked if there was a reason why she was getting out there, but she just opened up the door at that point. But before she left my car, she asked if I could come out and help her real quick. I asked with what, and she just told me to get out of the car. By now, I was thinking that this whole thing was really sketchy. I was regretting even giving her a ride in the first place. I told her to get out of my car. The woman then raised her voice and yelled at me to get out of the car now. I said no, and I hit the gas pedal and started driving. The woman then started literally screaming at me to stop the car over and over. I did not. I kept driving for at least 100 yards or so. Then I pulled over and I yelled at her to get out of my car. At that point, she finally did. She cursed at me several times before leaving the car and walking away. Then I quickly drove out of there. I'm pretty sure that the woman was setting me up to get robbed or something. I called the police after and reported everything. I'm glad that I didn't get out of the car where she wanted me to. Hopefully, nobody else fell for her tricks. I used to hitchhike when I was younger. This was back in the 90s, and I would hitchhike many places. I did it all over the country, and it was a cheap way to travel. Looking back, it was also a pretty dangerous way to travel, and I can't believe that I even did it as much as I did. Well, I'm going to tell you the story of what made me stop hitchhiking. I was going to go to California to visit some friends. I had already made it more than halfway there, but still had a ways to go. Somebody had just given me a ride to a city that I don't even remember exactly where it was, but I spent a couple of hours there and then was going to try to catch another ride. I stood near a major highway, but next to a road leading to it. Then I waited for somebody to stop. Eventually, this white van pulled over. The man driving told me that he could drive me. I told him where I was going, and he actually said that he was also going to California. I felt extremely lucky at that point. So I got inside of his van, and he told me that I could sit in the back. The man had long hair, and I remember a mustache. It was great to get a ride from him, because there was lots of space in the back of his van. After he started driving, we talked briefly, but not much. Soon, though, I got tired. I had been up since very early in the morning, and eventually I fell asleep. I don't know how long I was asleep for, but I've always been a pretty deep sleeper. Anyways, the next thing I knew, I woke up and the van was stopped. I sat up and looked around. It was still nighttime. The man was no longer driving and wasn't inside at all. I seemed to be the only person in the van. I looked out of the windows of the van to see where we were. It was parked in the driveway of a random house. But when I looked to the house, standing at the front door was the man who had been driving. I saw him talking to someone. Then the front door opened and several men exited the house. They all started walking in my direction. I just had a terrible feeling about it. I quietly went for the side door. I opened it up and I got out. Then I quickly ran down to the end of the driveway and into the next yard. I went down the street until I got to a random nearby house that seemed far enough away. I walked up and knocked on the door. I'm not even sure what time it was, but I got very lucky when the door opened up. When the person opened the door, I asked them to call the police, and thankfully they did. I explained to them what was going on, and I waited there on their front step. I did not see the men coming after me or anything. However, I did see the white van driving off down the road just a minute later. When the cops got there, everybody was gone. I got a ride to a nearby bus stop, and then used public transportation for the rest of my trip. This happened just a few weeks ago. I was driving one morning, and I was surprised to see a hitchhiker. He was standing on the side of the road, not too far from my apartment. I remember noticing him because I really never see hitchhikers. Obviously, I did not stop and give him a ride, and I kept going. But the very next day, I found myself driving really late at night. I was in the same general area, but a different spot. I saw a hitchhiker again. I'm pretty sure that it was the same guy, although I can't confirm that. It's not like I got a great look and memorized what the man looked like the day before, but just based on the fact that I saw a hitchhiker 2 days in a row, tells me that it was. So anyways, by this time the roads were extremely quiet. Hardly anyone else was out. I was less than 10 minutes from home. When I was approaching the hitchhiker guy, he started walking out into the road. I got a bad feeling because it looked like he was going to try to make me stop. I slowed down and went into the oncoming traffic lane, which was obviously empty. When I did though, the man kept walking, and he too went into that lane. So now I had to basically completely stop. I went back to the right, and so did the guy. I stopped and then rolled down my window and said that I could not give him a ride. He started to say something, but then I turned my wheel to the left and started slowly driving. The man did not run out in front of my car again. He sort of walked in that direction, but I was able to safely get around him. I started to continue down the road, feeling like I possibly avoided a bad situation. I noticed headlights in my mirror, seemingly out of nowhere. There was another car on the road, and I saw the hitchhiker guy walking out into the road again. I noticed that this car was stopping for him, and I was just able to see him getting inside the car before they basically were out of my sight because I was driving far enough away. I guessed that whoever was behind me had decided to stop and give the guy a ride. So I kept going, but the car behind me soon caught up with me and started basically riding my tail. This was kind of strange. When I had to turn at an upcoming street, I did, but the car behind me did as well. After continuing to drive very close behind me, I wondered if they were following me. Well, it kept going for the rest of the drive home. They were in fact following me, and obviously I could not go back to my apartment. It was at that moment when I remembered to drive to the police, so I did exactly that. It took me almost 10 minutes to go to the nearest police station. The car behind me followed the entire way, right until the end. Then it went someplace else. I ended up reporting what happened. I have not seen the guy or been followed since. I'm hoping that I never see him again.